everybody. I'm Melanie Penn. Welcome back to the Rising Podcast, where we talk about all things resurrection. And today I have with me in person, Thomas West and Trevin Wax. Trevin Wax is Vice President of Research and Development for the North American Mission Board, and he's also a visiting professor at Cedarville University. He's been a missionary to Romania. He's a regular columnist for the Gospel Coalition and has lectured on Christianity at Oxford. Thomas West is the pastor of Nashville First Baptist Church right downtown in Nashville, and he's the founder and former pastor of a church plant in London, Redeemer Queen's Park. He's a two-time graduate of Southeastern Seminary in Wake Forest. His ministry and research are driven by exploring the intersection of theology and culture and mission. Together, Thomas and Trevin have written a book called The Gospel Way Catechism, where they answer the fundamental questions of Christianity. And there's a book and a workbook. It's really good. And I think you'll enjoy this conversation with Thomas and Trevin. Trevin and Thomas, thank you so much for being here. Really quickly, would you tell people who you are, what you've been doing in the most recent season of your lives? Trevin, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I see myself first and foremost as a writer, and then I wear all these other hats. So my main role is I get to help with resources for church planters, pastors, compassion ministry, everything that goes through the North American Mission Board, which is a church planting compassion ministry arm of the Southern Baptist Convention. And then I'm also connected in all these other places where I get to write columns for the Gospel Coalition, continue to work on other resources, just whatever will help the church. And I see that as my main calling.
What about you?
Hey, Thomas, new to Nashville.
Yes.
In here about a year and a half now, at Nashville First Baptist Church, where I'm the senior pastor. And we're having a great time right in Broadway, historic church in a creative, thriving city. So we're figuring all of that out. Prior to that was over in London, England. I was a church planter, planted in a church called Redeemer Queen's Park. And before that, Raleigh, North Carolina, different pastor jobs along the way. And Trevin and I got to know each other through our seminary days. We had some courses together in our PhD seminars, and we hit it off there with a shared interest in some different missionaries, and we've kept up with each other over the years.
Thank you for being here to talk about the resurrection. And you both, not only in your ministry background, but you've been working on a book that is now out. And I would just love to dive in. What is your favorite part of the resurrection narrative?
I honestly think if I have to pick like a favorite part of the resurrection narrative, it's when Mary sees him in the garden tomb, outside the tomb, and thinks it's the gardener. And the deeper meaning of that is she's not wrong.
Right.
Because he is the second Adam, the last Adam, Paul would tell us, right? So we are back in the garden in some sense. And she's seeing him, and in her confusion and tears, she mistakes him for the gardener. But in the deeper underneath that he is the one that is tending the new garden, that is bringing, it's the unleashing of Eden back into the world through this nuclear explosion of the resurrection, this new thing that's happened, new creation exploding into the world. And so there's those beautiful parallels with Genesis and the resurrection that they just make my heart soar at the beauty of the scriptures.
I love that description of the resurrection. Like pure energy.
Yeah.
Pure nuclear energy
is still going out across the world.
That gives me chills. Yeah. That definitely gives me chills. What about you?
Yeah. For me, I love that he shows up to the women first. I love all the culturally subversive activity that's involved in there. There's so many different ways we could take this. Trevin, over to your side. Even what he's saying before, how he's the gardener, that old Persian word, he has the keys to the king's garden and he can let us in. It's beautiful. But I actually think it's the confusion, it's the shock, and it's the struggle, that tension, that difficulty with coming to terms with it. I find it so comforting and encouraging. So many times I want to write myself into the story thinking, man, if I was there, like, surely this would be so much easier. And it's like, no, it was shocking. It was hard. And yet There's loads of evidences, and they became convinced. And that's available to us today as well.
And some doubted phrases in the narratives are interesting because you think if you were there, like you would never doubt seeing the resurrected Christ, but maybe I would. Maybe I would have doubted. We don't know. We weren't there. Okay, so are there any threads you'd like to pull out about Easter and the resurrection, things for the average student of the Bible? What was the most compelling?
The resurrection of Jesus is not just about what happened on Easter morning. That's the start of something. That's the crucial climax, the moment that we're talking about and that you're singing about. But Jesus' resurrection is the first fruits of a future harvest. So it's not just that by coming back from the dead, Jesus assures us a heavenly afterlife. It's that this new creation that has happened here is connected to the resurrection of our physical bodies when we will be made like him, we will be like him, and the new heavens, new earth, which is physical, not just our spirits going to heaven when we die, but physical at the end of time. Me recognizing how my future resurrection is grounded in and tied up with and united to Jesus and his physical resurrection, it just makes the story so much more compelling.
I think the fact that Jesus rose again on a Jewish holiday, the festival of the first fruits, that's Resurrection Day. Can you just start from scratch and explain that to folks? Because that was new to me.
You see all throughout the scriptures, there's the desire to show how Jesus, how we as God's people are called to bring our first fruits of a harvest, or our first fruits, basically to bring our best and our, to give to God in offering. But it's also a moment of trust in that God is our provider, that God is the one that we entrust ourselves to, and that He's our guarantee, so to speak. And so the Apostle Paul really brings this out in 1 Corinthians 15 when he talks about Jesus being the first fruits of the new creation. What I think is unique about the way that the New Testament talks about the resurrection and why it's so explosive and surprising is faithful first century Jews believed that there would be a resurrection. Martha, when she meets Jesus, outside the tomb of her brother Lazarus, when Jesus tells her, your brother will live again, her first response is one of faith. What Jesus is about to show is that resurrection power from the last day is invading the present. And it happens to an extent with Lazarus. Lazarus is brought back to his old way of existence. He's raised from the dead, but he dies again. Jesus, resurrection morning, the thing that separates Jesus from all the other raisings that you have in the scriptures is that he's the first fruits of a new kind of resurrected bodily experience. And that's going to be ours too. So that's when we say the first fruits this is the initial harvest of something that is going to come for everyone.
Yes.
So good. 1 Corinthians 15, right? 20 to 23. Paul talks about it not once, but twice. Christ is the first fruits. So what an encouragement that God is presently doing a new thing right now, like with a looking back 2,000 years to what happened. We're in the middle of a new thing that's happening. Yes, we have so much that we're looking forward to in the future, but God is presently doing that new thing right now. What a wild truth to let your heart and mind start to rise up to. I think it invades the present now with wonderful potentials, wonderful hope. We're in the middle of a new thing.
I love what you said about Christ's physical body resurrected and that it's a new way of being human. Because it does sound like superhero stuff. Like, oh, you've got these powers now. You're back from the dead and now you've got powers. That's like the superhero story.
Right. It's mysterious. It's mysterious. And you can see the first century witnesses wrestling with how to describe this. In fact, I mean, what's also interesting about it is how confused they are at times, how at times they don't recognize him, but then they do recognize him. And then, so it's such a mind-blowing thing. So Jesus isn't brought back so he is raised from the dead physically, but there's a mysterious enough difference. He's the first one to have gone through death and to come out the other side. And so there's all of these clues and things in the Bible where the New Testament writers and the witnesses are trying to describe what's happening. And this is where it really gets interesting. So, for example, he suddenly appears in these rooms that are locked. He didn't come in the normal way. And you're like, okay, so how did that happen? I think our tendency is to think, well, his resurrection body must be ghostly.
Like a mist or something.
Yes, like he sort of like, appeared. And I think it's actually the opposite of that his new body, C.S. Lewis in The Great Divorce talks about the physicality of heaven being so physical that the grades of glass would cut your feet as a human right now because it's more physical than you are. You're the shadow compared to the physicality of that. And so I think what you're seeing with the resurrection is not that Jesus is this sort of mystical, ghostly feeling that's just appearing here and there, but that the walls are so thin and shadowy that he is more solid than the rest of the world. But then they also have he eats, right? So he eats fish in their presence. It's, again, another clue. Okay, he's obviously physical. He's the same, yet he's different. Some of them are wondering how to deal with this. And yet, the thing that just gets me is that he still has the scars of love. The scars are still there. But it's like he's renewed and he's, I guess superhero kind of. But the scars that demonstrate his love that were there with him on the cross go with him into eternity. So it's a perfected body, but it's a perfected body that somehow incorporates the redemptive pain and suffering that he experienced for us. The resurrection is not the happy ending after Jesus' crucifixion on Good Friday. It is the new beginning of God's new creation.
I think it's interesting how our culture is kind of interested in these outer space stories, like someone from space comes to Earth and then goes back to space. It's like, even in the most, it sounds funny when you say it out loud, but that is what we're talking about.
I think one of the challenges we have is that we think of heaven as a distant, faraway place up there somewhere without realizing that heaven is actually God's dimension of reality. So we live in this world where we are, we can see and speak and move in this sort of space-time continuum. God is close, but in a different, heaven is a different dimension. It's not some faraway place up in space somewhere. It's right here. And so, and this also gets to some of the aspects of the Christian life. There are times when people will say this, they sense the presence of God in a unique way, or we say God is everywhere, God is always with us, right? But there are times when the experience of that, and the ancient Celtic groups would call it like a thin space,
right,
between heaven and earth. So there are times in prayer, when you take the Lord's Supper, other times when you're pressed up against that thin space between heaven and earth. So it's not like the Reformers actually would talk about the Lord's Supper as with the Spirit, where there's really an ascent. It's not that something in the bread and the wine is magical as much as it's in this moment of partaking of the Lord's Supper by faith, the Spirit of God is lifting us into the heavenlies. And so when you're pressed up against that thin space between heaven and earth, and you may have felt this before, you may have felt it at the death of someone who's a faithful follower of Jesus. You may have felt it, at a different time. So I think the ascension is when Jesus ascends, it's not that he just sort of shoots off into the sky until they can't see him anymore.
Like leaves the planet.
Right. The cloud covers him and he disappears from our sight into the dimension of reality that we are not privy to, but that God is there. It's not that he's far away. He says, I will be with you always.
Right.
It's not that he left us in that sense.
Right.
He's still with us, but out of our sight in the other dimension. And that's where he is, and he intercedes before the throne, and that's where he's already exalted as King of the world.
This is wild. I've never thought of it this way. That heaven is a current invisible kingdom coexisting here like another dimension, like you said. Is that what you said? Is that what you said?
Yes.
And I know it's just like we're wondering, right? But when you said that, it did make me think about how when scientists tell us, hey, there's all these spectrums of light that are invisible to the human eye. There's a huge spectrum of sound. There are all these things going on that our senses can't pick up. Is that the heavenly dimension?
Well, do you remember the story of Elisha and his servant?
Right.
And suddenly they get a glimpse. There's this, battle that's about to happen, and they get this glimpse of heavenly forces all around.
Yeah.
In that moment, God opened their eyes to get the glimpse of what is around us. And we like to talk about angels, demons, even. We talk about the spiritual...
This whole unseen world.
The whole unseen realm. And so in that sense, I would say heaven is closer than we realize. We're not privy except in special moments as to what might be happening exactly in that dimension, but or according to what Scripture tells us is happening there. But that is... Right now, heaven and earth, in that sense, the dimensions are separated because of sin.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see the new heavens and the new earth coming back together in Revelation, that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
It's not that we leave earth and go to heaven. It's that heaven and earth are one again. This is my Father's world. You know that song?
Yes, of course.
That last verse talks about how Jesus who died will be satisfied and earth and heaven be one.
Be one.
There's a separation of heaven and earth. Like, people are literally cast out of God's presence. And it's this long, slow journey of heaven invading earth once again through the incarnation, all the way through the ascension of Jesus. So, story of the church going forth in the world, God's people. It's a kingdom expansion identifiable through these little outposts called local congregations.
Mm-hmm.
But heaven's making its way. And one day it'll have its way. It'll come all the way through in the end. Yeah,
it makes one wonder. I've always thought of the flaming swords of Eden as you're shut out from a physical place, but maybe the flaming swords of Eden were actually our senses getting more dull. Like we lost access to that fully realized existence that we once had. And maybe our resurrected bodies will just be restored sight, restored ability to touch and see things as they really are. Maybe that's what that verse means, like now we see through a glass darkly. Maybe that's what that is, that veil is there.
Yeah. And we'll see God. That's the ultimate, the blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. This is one of the great promises of the Bible. What does that mean exactly to see God? The ancient theologians call it, the beatific vision, where you're seeing God. And to some people, that sounds like weird. You're just kind of like, wait, am I just going to be gazing at God all of eternity? How would that even work? But I think where we have to understand that is that our finite minds will never be able to take in God's infinity. And even when we are redeemed and glorified, we'll still be finite in the sense that we're created. We're creature, not creator. What I love about thinking about the beatific vision is that we will together we will be fully satisfied and yet still hungry for more, which it sounds like a paradox, but this is the case when even like now physically eating, part of getting excited about a big meal you're going to have is knowing I'm going to eat really well. Like there's a steak waiting or there's whatever it is going to be. But part of with God is that we will be totally satisfied in Him and yet hungry for more of Him and never come to the end of Him in that sort of vision because of who God is and who we are. We'll never be able to take in the full infinity. And so all of eternity will be that sort of cycle of hunger and satisfaction going on forever. That will be, that will be the most satisfying thing.
In a joyful way.
And we see people like reaching out and trying to grab it. We talk a lot about success. Everybody wants to ascend. We talk about climbing the ladder.
Yeah.
We talk about like we're trying to work myself out of it. And part of how we get to it in the Catechism, specifically with the ascension of Jesus, is the idea of this is Jesus maybe as you would think of a new prime minister, like needs an appropriate installation service. A king needs to be crowned or enthroned. A president needs to get inaugurated. Part of what we see in the ascension is Jesus being exalted. This is the crowning. This is the coronation ceremony. So it takes us over to Psalm 110 that talks about Jesus being the installed, crowned king over creation. So we see it in the ascension right there. But we think about climbing. We know we want to go. We know we want to get up, and it's over there in end of world ideas as well. I mean, there's a sense of fascination because we have this wild sense of wonder, amazement. Like, where is it going? How's it gonna turn out?
It's built in. Everyone knows that something's gonna happen. Yeah. We're going somewhere.
Yeah. It shows up and even for I think popularly how it's even resisted is through all sorts of ideas that we want to transcend it, we want to transform this idea of glorification. That's where it gets mirrored up in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, even now people are trying to, to find people have been looking for the elixir of eternal life forever, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone's got. You can just scroll through Instagram, and there's all kinds of algorithms feeding you of this is what you need to do to, stave off this or to keep this
new supplements, that's right. Get a facelift, whatever it is,
life hack
live forever.
That's right. But I think marketers know something that Augustine would have said, or that other people have known throughout history, is that we yearn for immortality. We yearn for eternity. Eternity is written in our hearts, and that's why. People can sell stuff to us for that. But I mean, there's some scary stuff going on in the world about, trying to figure out how can we extend human life or extend human consciousness beyond bodily existence and whatnot. And all of those are ways at trying to get to or trying to achieve what Christ is already giving us.
Right.
And it's trying in a human way to grasp, just like Adam in the garden, at what God is actually offering as gift, if we go his way. And so when you see that, you can see, even today, 2,000 years later, this is what these yearnings will drive humanity toward. But going back to what we talked about with the space-time continuum and sort of like our dimension of reality right now, again, because Jesus is, because he is outside of. It's fascinating because this is the thing that will really blow your mind. Jesus tells in the upper room discourse, Jesus tells the disciples, "It is better for you
that I go,
yes, and that I send." Now that sounds crazy. You're saying it's better for the believers that Jesus not be physically present, but because he is outside of our sort of space-time continuum, and because of the ascension, and because the Spirit is present and because he transcends time and space in that way, he can be, because of that, present through the Spirit to all believers as he's interceding before the Father. But it really is important that we recognize Jesus still is physical. Now, exactly how the physical body of Jesus is manifesting in that other dimension, that's mystery beyond me. Because at this point, believers that have died, their spirits are with Jesus, right? We talk about this in the Catechism as well. Our spirits soar to be with Christ. He is our hope in life and death. But those spirits are waiting for. Paul talks about how that life, that afterlife now, currently, is one in which we are unclothed, meaning we don't have our bodies. And that's not the final state. That's not ultimately. So as perfect as heaven is currently, the current heaven, even now, people are, the spirits, those who have gone before us, they're waiting for that reunification of spirit and body that will happen in the last day with the resurrection.
Yeah, disembodied souls at rest, at peace, in the presence of God, waiting for the resurrection of the dead, where all will be raised. The people who do worship judgment. God, resurrected to a life of eternal joy and bliss. Whereas Augustine said, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. We're finding that rest now, but we'll find that rest for all of eternity.
And I would just say, if you're going to boil down the Christian life to what it means to follow Jesus, at the end of the day, the main reason I'm a follower of Jesus is because I'm convinced the resurrection is true. And I don't know about you, but I'm just going to listen to the guy who actually went through death and out the other side.
That's good.
That's going to be, that's enough for me. I'm staking everything on that.
Yes.
I think the Apostle Paul tells us to do that.
Yes.
And would want us to do that.
Yeah.
And he's still speaking today.
That's right.
Amen.
Trevin and Thomas, thank you so much for being here today. You blew my mind in a very good way, and many blessings on this project. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Rising podcast as we look further into the resurrection of Jesus. Did you know The Rising is also an album? The Rising is an album that I wrote that tells the story of Christ's resurrection. Each song on the album is written from a different perspective of someone who was actually there at the resurrection. Each guest on The Rising also has a perspective. And you know what? So do you. I would venture to say that your perspective is the one that I'm most interested in. Would so love it if you'd subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and you can find new episodes on any of those platforms as well. If you want to get to know me better, you can find me on Instagram or go to melaniepenn.com and you can send me a message there. I make things for you, and I'm so glad that you were here for The Rising.